you're with me for your entire band stint, you get 7 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
See
you
you
very
next
much.
time. We recently had the 6th grade choir concert. This was their first concert and they did a great job. Lots of people came to cheer them on. They will have more concerts in the future, not just them, but the other grades as well.
6th grade choir concert. This was their second concert, which they nailed as well. They were performing the Nutcracker, and lots of friends and family came once again to cheer them on.
Yes, all of these clubs are awesome. But if you think that's awesome, check out these awesome kids we interviewed from TMS. They're both in different grades, play different sports, have different accomplishments and different goals. Let's take a look, shall we?
Zeke Clank. He is in 8th grade and 13 years old. He loves playing football, basketball, and track. His favorite part about TMS is the different variety of classes we offer, and his favorite subject is world cultures. One suggestion he had about TMS is he wished there was a way to make sure there was less fighting around the school. And his favorite lunch from TMS is the walking tacos.
This student is Olivia Taylor. She is in 6th grade. She is 12 years old, and she plays cheer and dance. Her favorite thing about TMS is the Fall Festival, and her favorite subject is math and choir. Her favorite lunch from TMS is stuffed crust cheese pizza.
Student involvement. As you know, this is our principal, Mr. Derrickson's first year at Talawanda Middle School. It is only his first year here, and he's doing an amazing job. He even came to our band and choir concerts to support and cheer us on. One of his main goals as a principal is to have student involvement. I personally, as a student, think he succeeded at that. He trusts his students with his heart and always gives them second chances. A great example of that I want you guys to hear about is the TMS morning news broadcast. Me, Chloe Goodman, presented the idea to Mr. Derrickson, and he loved it. More students got involved, and we made it happen. We film in front of the green screen in the media center with an iPad. We video every day in tutorials so it can be shown the following morning. But none of this would have happened without the trust and support from Mr. Derrickson. Youth voice and engagement is so important for a school to have, and Mr. Derrickson sees that and makes it happen. He believes that the students' voices matters, and he encourages us to get involved at school. The result of that is our learning engagement is at an all-time high.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Principals Derrickson and Arnie, and our staff that are here today, as well as the students that presented and make this. Board, are there any questions or comments?
I just want to say that was awesome. Yeah. You were awesome. Again, wonderful things happening at the middle school. Thank you to all the students and all the teachers and support staff and administrators. You're all doing an incredible job there this year.
Thank you very much, ladies. You represented yourself and your school and your parents very well. Everyone should be proud of you. You did a nice job.
I just want to say I really needed that, so thank you.
I think we'll pause before you start the next video because I don't think you really want to stay around for the whole meeting, and this might be a chance for you all to leave, which is more than fine. So we'll take a couple minutes and let the people that came for the middle school presentation, if you choose to leave, it's a nice time to do it without interrupting other people. So we'll give you a minute, but if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay.
We know you have school tomorrow, so.
The school night.
While we're taking this pause, we did get the video sound to be working. Unfortunately, it looks like the beginning part will have no voice, but we will see what we can do to fix that. But in the middle of this TMS presentation, we know we did have sound going on, and it's working now.
Right, and if someone wants to see the whole presentation, they can go to Board Docs and look at the agenda, and it's there as an attachment, correct?
Yes,
And so.
but the
peop-
sound may not be working in the beginning because we had that issue with YouTube. That's why I was just saying,
Right.
we're going to go back and see if we can replace it and have it sound. But it is working out. It started in the middle of the TMS presentation, so sound is on.
You have another presentation then?
We do. At this point in time, we purposely took a little bit of a break because the video, safety video that we're about to show could be upsetting to young children and other individuals. This safety video is posted on our website. We're going to show this. So if you're at home and if you want to ensure that younger children don't see this first before you do that, or even if you want to turn away, you can do it. It's not bad, but it could be upsetting. It is a video made by our high school students and staff. Andy Zimmerman led it with his class, which he works on. Anna Newland, Logan Dawson, Braden Shiflett. I'm sorry, I've lost. Tyler Hazelwood, Jacob Berger, Haley Schutte, Lucia Rodbro, Caleb Bogset, Rory West Poley, and Dean Craddock. Were involved in making this safety video for the high school. This video will be posted and it will be used, and it will also be used not just for the community, but for our students in there. It mirrors our run, hide, fight, professional development, and our push in the maintaining safety within the Talawanda School District. We've trained all of our staff. We had 2 trainings for that. And now we've moved into training our students. The training looks very different, as you can imagine, from elementary to middle school and high school. So with that, we've had enough time for you to pause if you needed to move away. Mr. Rand, would you please play the safety video that our students and staff made?
Reese. I'm with the City of Oxford Police Department, and I'm assigned SRO for Talawanda High School. Okay. We have pretty intensive training when it comes to active shooter awareness and incidents, I guess you'd say. My university conducted some training over the summer that was around, several hours. The City of Oxford itself, along with Miami, did another 8-hour training. Basically all scenarios talking about different incidents and tactics. Then combined with Talawanda High School and all the schools in the school district, we did kind of our own little training, which involved some PowerPoint presentation and a simulation of what that actually might occur. So there was an actual hands-on, in-service kind of thing for teachers to kind of go through their plans and work their plans. And that that old cliche, I guess you'd say, if you see something, say something. That's probably the most important part of this, because when it's actually happening, if it were to actually happen, a lot of that preventative measures just goes out. And so a lot of these incidents, if not all of them, they all have something, a build-up, a lead-up. Someone has heard something, or they know someone who's said something in that effect. And I think that's the most important part, that if you hear something or see something, you say something about it. Whether it's false or not, you have an opportunity to kind of get it before it happens. That's the best thing that you can possibly do. The tiers of security that we have here is that we have locked doors, and if they see doors that are ajar or unlocked or faulty in some ways, to bring it to the attention of the teachers. If they see people outside that don't look like that they're students or faculty for that matter, they should bring it to the attention of any of the staff here. And then also, again, if they're around school and just something seems suspicious to them, it might be likely suspicious to us as well. Yeah. And so it's never a bad idea, even if it's ends up being nothing, to let somebody know just in case, because that's what we're worried about, the just in case. So it's not necessarily in any order, but the highest probability of survivability is running. That's the biggest thing. If there's an active shooter someplace in the school, if you are not on the X, so to speak, the best thing for you to do is to run in any direction outside of the school, get as far away as possible, just leave. You have the highest probability of survivability at that point. Getting away from the school gets you off the X. It keeps things like, it keeps the attention away from me so that I have an opportunity to engage a shooter, as well as other police officers who are going to be arriving, because in the event of something like that occurring, there's going to be an overwhelming force of police presence that are going to be around, off-duty officers, you name it. The last school incident that I've actually responded to, there was approximately 70 officers before we started calling people off. So there's going to be an overwhelming response, and that goal, running, getting away, get off the X, is the best thing you can do. The next thing is, if you don't have that opportunity because it's located outside of your door, or if it's down your hallway, and listening to your teachers is probably the best thing for that. If you're not sure what to do, they're going to have kind of an idea because they've been kind of briefed on this as well. The best thing you can do is hide. And what I mean by hiding is not necessarily just staying inside your room, but it's barricading the door to your room by any means possible, staying out of the threat angles that are coming from the door, and using whatever common sense that you have, either to escape out windows or to stay out of sight, because what we're doing there is we're causing time to elapse, and the more time the shooter takes, the better, or the advantage it gives me and other officers responding here, that we're going to end the situation. So hiding is the next best option in order for survival. And then the last option is, if you're stuck in the middle of it and you're on the X when it occurs, is fighting. And fighting can basically be summed up as not just one person, but an overwhelming force of people to jump on the shooter and try and overwhelm them and take them down by using any means, any force necessary. In those situations, it's not something you want to talk about, but nor do you want to practice, but there are no rules in that circumstance because people's lives are at stake, and that's the best option for anyone who's caught in it, I guess you would say, is to fight their way out, take the shooter down if all possible. That also increases time as well. The more time that you create is more opportunity for me to respond there and take care of the situation, as well as other officers arriving on scene to give help and render aid. So in that, not necessarily in that order, but those three things are primarily what we practice now, what the Department of Homeland Security really recommends and we emphasize, and that's what we're teaching and practicing and implementing here in Talawanda High School.
So again, I want to thank Andy Zimmerman, who is a high school teacher here in his class, for making this video that will be a part of our training video. On January 4th, each building has a safety threat assessment team. They will be trained on this new protocols. About a year ago, the legislators mandated schools with grades 6 through 12 must have a safety assessment threat team in place. We were ahead of this and had many of the protocols and procedures in place in all of our buildings. So we have expanded our building safety threat teams to all buildings, just not through 6 through 12. So thank you for watching that video as we work to ensure Talawanda's safety the best that we can.
Thank you, Dr. Thoreau. We will now have our public participation part of the meeting. A reminder, we'll limit this to 30 minutes. Each speaker has 3 minutes to speak. I will give you about a 10-second warning so you know to wrap it up. I would ask that when you approach the mic, you give your name and area of residency within the school district, and make sure your comments are directed at the board and the presiding officer. So would anybody like to address the board this evening?
Mike Dittman, Talawanda, Hanover Township. Good evening, all. As I look over these budget adjustments you're going to discuss later, I see they're not going to eliminate our deficit spending. Shouldn't this be the goal, to manage to our budget? Reason we are in our current position is not because the taxpayers didn't pass the levy. We are in this position because this board and previous boards have mismanaged our funds. It is time to spend within our means. We all know we spend $2,000 per student per year more than similar districts. That's well documented. Another issue, at last month's board meeting, some of the board members made some very unprofessional comments that I don't think were called for. The board needs to make the changes that are required to move this school district forward and stop blaming others. It is time for this board to do their job that you were elected to do. Thank you all for serving, and I hope you all have a very happy holiday season.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Good evening, Matt Likens, resident of Oxford, teacher, taxpayer, Talawanda Educator Association co-president. So we were obviously hoping we wouldn't have to address the board about our current situation, but the voting public made it abundantly clear on November 8th that they were unwilling to support our district's attempt to continue to support our staff and students as we have been. But as the proposed changes have been and are introduced and explained, it'll also become abundantly clear that there is less to trim than many people thought. The costs will bleed, and they will bleed immediately. Hopefully, the plan will call attention to the fact that this is not a district that's been run irresponsibly. The operating levy passed in 2004 managed to last 18 years, 2 recessions, and a pandemic. If anything, it's a district that's tried too hard to meet the needs of a community that's taken it for granted for too long, and it's tried to meet the needs of a diverse group of students. A district staffed with real people who aren't babysitters or waiters in a restaurant, which isn't a disparagement of either of those jobs, merely a false comparison insinuated by too many. We aren't providing a service to customers. This is not an exchange of goods and services. We're charged with maintaining a utility for everyone in the community, no different than law enforcement, water, or sewage. And that costs money. Now we're faced with how to respond to our present circumstances, and while TEA doesn't necessarily agree with every detail of the proposal, and in fact believes it will destroy our district, we recognize that the reality is that the budget must be cut, and there's no way to do that without hurting students and staff. Positions, programs, and people, anyone who pretends otherwise isn't being realistic, regardless of what you may have read on social media. That this plan could potentially lead to the loss of nearly 30 certified staff members across a wide variety of disciplines, but most glaringly in the arts, electives, and mental health services, all but one of our resource officers, not to mention the classified staff, including custodians, classroom aides, food service, and facilities, is gut-wrenching and an indicator that small measures can't and won't work. It's not a scam or a threat, it's reality. Bake sales aren't going to cut it. We could cut every sport, club, and field trip, plug every leaky faucet and let the grass grow up to the windows, put our staff on a pay freeze, cut the benefits of every administrator, hell, cut every administrator. And it still wouldn't be sufficient to keep the district running without increased support from the community. Schools aren't buildings, buses, sports, or Facebook posts. They're not even the superintendent or the board and whatever feelings you may have about them and what they're trying to save. Schools are the people that work in them, the people who teach and clean and serve food and protect our kids, and even more, the kids who need those people. These cuts, if taken to their logical end, will
10
provide
seconds.
us with some face unrecognizable. To pretend otherwise is to rationalize away one's own personal motives, whether out of greed, ignorance, or both. The community has spoken decisively. Other people aren't as important as their own bottom line. If the board's
Thank you,
plan becomes a reality...
Mr. Likens, I'm sorry, I really got to cut you off. Thank you. Got to be fair, and apparently my clock's ringing. Would anybody else like to address the board?
Hello. Excuse me. My name is Matt Garland. I live in Hanover Township. First, I'd like to thank you, Board and Mr. Thoreau, for taking the safety of all the students in the district seriously. Sadly, that is something we have to deal with, and I appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and your attention to all that goes with that. Second, I would like to comment that I was here on October 20th, I believe it was, and mentioned that there was some ways to cut some money. And as I looked at the suggestions that I found on the website, none of what I suggested was on there. I believe I came up with around $90,000. No, that's not going to save the school. No, it's not going to prevent a levy from being needed. But it would show, in my eyes, and over 60% of the voters probably agree to some extent, that administration needs to pay a little bit more. Back in 2009, when the economy went down the toilet, the employer I work for in a municipality, and I'm also represented by a labor organization, we went without a raise for 5 or 6 years. My health care went up tremendously. We just had to suck it up. That's how it is. Hard times are exactly that. They're hard times. So we find ourselves in that spot now. The economy is, some argue good, some argue bad. That's personal opinion. I just think that for everyone to support the school, which people do, I believe if the administrators and some of the teachers would take a little more of a hit, and I have no problems with teachers, I have no problems with administrators, it's just these are tough times. I would ask that those two entities show us by your actions that you are serious and that you are very concerned about this state we find ourselves in. So I would probably be more likely to vote for a levy if I saw some better action from the school district. That's all the voters are asking. We have to stop with the us versus them. It's just ridiculous. We need to figure out how to work together and everybody do their fair share. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board? Seeing no one. Oh, you are getting up. Okay.
Hello, Amanda Weatherwax, resident, teacher, and TEA member, and I'd just like to read the last sentence of Mr. Likens' speech. To pretend otherwise is to rationalize away one's own personal motives, whether out of greed, ignorance, or both. The community has spoken decisively. Other people aren't as important as their own bottom line. If the board's plan becomes reality, we will, in the next few years, see exactly what that looks like. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Amy Shaman. I live in the city of Oxford, and I have a child at Kramer. My heart really breaks for this district. Watching our incredible middle school kids get up and talk about their pride in their school and all the amazing things that are happening there. I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room or watching online who thought about all the things that they participated and talked about, all the things they participated in that are on the list to be destroyed. And it's heartbreaking, and I'm not very articulate about it because I'm in the place of great sadness and anger and concern for our kids. So I want to also say that I'm thinking of all those who work in the district, all those who are worried about their future, their family's future, their jobs, the kids that they teach and care about. And I would really like to challenge those people who chose not to vote to really think every day if their choice not to vote is worth what is going to happen to this school district and potentially to our community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Eliza Sullivan. I'm a resident of Oxford. I'm also a junior here at the high school. I know something that is on the chopping block for the budget is AP, CCP, just higher than general education classes. And I just want to say that I think that's something we need to prioritize. I moved here from Chicago. I'm still friends with a lot of people from Chicago. And I see, their high school experience that I might have had and how much better it is here with the small community and the funding that we get here, and the way that it has set me up for success a lot better. In addition, I think it's important to make sure we retain a lot of our teachers. I don't think I could point to a single teacher that I've had that I have not learned a lot from. And I'm hoping to go to Miami for international political science, and that has been sparked by teachers here. In addition, the college credits that I've been able to earn through AP and CCP classes, I've done the math, and it's entirely possible that I'll be able to graduate without student debt, which is going to set me up for success in the future. And I understand that this levy will not be voted on again before my senior year, but it's not too late for a lot of the community members. It's not too late for my brother in 7th grade, and I hope that we can get some more funding for this school so that other kids can have the same opportunities that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and your opinions. We do appreciate hearing from you. Now we'll move on with the meeting with the report of the treasurer, Mr. Fauski.
A little bit of blocking. I am recommending that it is recommended that the board approve the following items. The minutes from the November 17th, 2022 regular meeting, approval of the gifts, which there are none at this time, approval of appropriation modifications, approval of then and nows over 3,000, and approval of the financial report for November 2022.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve 6A, B, C, D, and E?
So moved.
And the second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? I have a couple things there. Mr. Fauski, you went through E, right? You stopped at E.
Sorry?
Did you stop at E? Because I stopped at E.
I did. I included E as well.
Okay, all right. So in the financial report, we have 3 attachments. Could you briefly explain what those are to show what's out every month on our financial report that's in our board docs that's on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first report that is there is literally a reconciliation of the month's expenses, what we've brought in, our investments, our what is in our bank. So you can literally see line by line the monthly reconciliation. On the second page of that report, which is probably the third page since the first one is a cover page, it is literally a breakdown of what we have received per category based on the 5-year forecast, as well as the expenses. Next to it then is fiscal year to date in those same categories. Alongside that is a percentage of what we have received or spent compared to the latest forecast that was approved. And then to the far right is fiscal year to date, what happened this time last year. Below it, there might be a few notes as far as what are some key items to be looking at or what I thought was important for this past month. And then below, it's just a simple breakdown of our cash summary compared to the prior year. The third report that is out on there is the cash summary report, and that is literally every fund that is on our books. And it will show you what our initial cash is at the start of the school year, what we have brought in month to date, what we have brought in fiscal year to date, same for the expenditures. It will give you our the ending cash balance, and then what is also encumbered as far as committed to spend, because we have contracts or obligations out there. The third report is our disbursement report for the month. It is literally everything that has been spent, or a check, electronic or physical, has been cut for the month of November. It shows you the payroll, the taxes, every vendor that has been paid, the name and the dollar amount associated with it. That is every month.
So basically, every month, the public could look at our checkbook almost
Yes.
and see exactly where the money comes in.
Yes.
And exactly where it's going out, and it's been there for years.
Yes, so for them to see what is coming in, we could actually do the same type of report. We could add a fourth report, similar to the disbursement. We could do a revenue ledger, if we so desired. Then they could actually see what's coming in, what's going out. But yes, we can see what's going out.
I appreciate all that being available for people that are interested. Any other comments or questions? If not, would you call the roll, Mr. Fauski?
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abwitz?
Yes.
Mr. Bothist?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next up is 6F, and it is recommended that the board approve a resolution to participate in the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund.
Can I get a motion to approve 6F?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Any questions?
Can you explain this?
Yes. So this is a fund that was established back in, I think, 1976. It is a trust account that the Ohio School Board, I was thinking OASBO, set up in order to assist school districts in legal matters that might have an impact on other school districts within Ohio. So we actually were able to take part and utilize this fund back with some property that we had, that we have at the high school, the farming, as far as property taxation. So we were actually able to take part. They assisted us in our legal battles to make sure that that farmland that we were leasing out was able to remain tax exempt.
Cool, thank you.
Want to call the roll, please?
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Bothist?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abwitz?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item up is 6G, and we're going to need a recommendation for someone to be the president pro tem for the 2023 organizational meeting.
Would
So I need a
someone
nomination.
would someone like to nominate someone to run our organizational meeting?
I nominate David Bothus to be our president pro tem.
Any other nominations? Well, seeing none, then Mr. Bothus, you get to be president pro tem for the January organizational meeting, and you'll get lots of instructions beforehand. Thank you. Anything else, Ms.
Yeah, I
Strowski?
just have two quick updates. You've passed the bus garage coming in. The slab was poured this past Tuesday at 6 o'clock this morning. They wrapped it up about 9 o'clock this morning. I got to see the tail end of it. It was really kind of cool. They are moving along. We are still expected to meet our deadline of the end of June. Underground work still continues, and you will be seeing a roof very shortly. Next item is, we have talked about our ESSER funds quite a bit over the past 2 years. With the ESSER ARP funds, which some would call the ESSER 3 funds, we were able to take an evaluation of our elementary playgrounds, and ODE approved a new outdoor learning environment. A little bit pieces here, like Kramer will get a bigger revamp overhaul. Marshall is in desperate need of a preschool playground. And then Bogan is going to get a small revamp, but become more accessible to all children. So we were able to get ODE to approve this budgeted amount. We have been, not we, Mr. Hubbard and the principals have been meeting with contractors, with design professionals, looking at ideas. They have been able to narrow it down to one company. A proposal is being put together as we speak, and we expect to be able to bring that to you in January to approve. And Mr. Hubbard is going to be doing a presentation with hopefully some slides on what these playgrounds will look like. And what I just want to stress is this is not coming out of the general fund. This is coming out of ESSER grant money.
Thank you very much.
And that ESSER grant defines what we can spend it on. Correct.
Well, 20% of the ARP had to be spent on student intervention, but we were able to, they were promoting the outdoor learning environments. And so, we had a need in some of our areas, and
Thank you, Mr. Fauske. Now for the report of the superintendent.
Good evening. I am going to recommend that we block some items too. So I am recommending the approval of the following. 7A1, it is recommended that the board approve the building substitutes. There are 2 on an as-needed basis, pending that they pass everything that we need to hire them. 7B1, approval of a limited employment classified staff contract. It's an EA and a custodian. 7B2, approval of substitute classified staff employees. It's an educational assistant and 2 custodian positions. 7B3, acceptance of a resignation of a classified personnel for retirement purposes. 7C1, rescinding a supplemental contract for Destination Imagination. 7C2, the approval of supplemental contracts for basketball, cross country, and volleyball.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve 7A1, 7B1, 2, and 3, and 7C1 and 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Edwards. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Any questions or discussion? Not, would you call the roll, Mr. Fauske?
Dr. Knight Edwards,
Yeah.
Mr. Otto,
Yes.
Mr. Booth, Dr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we're going to do something a little bit different. We had a board work session, and some individuals were able to participate and were able to come and watch the board conduct the board workshop. No decisions were made at the board workshop, but I provided lots of recommendations starting this school year into the next 3 years. It's a 3-year plan, not including this school year. The board had set some goals for us to look at when we were making the recommendations of $75,000 this year, $1.2 million next year, the following year, $1.7 million, $2.4 the following year, with a total of a little over $5.3 million total. We understand that the community did not pass the levy. We understand, and before I even begin to talk about this, we've heard some people come and talk in public session. We've had emails, we have comments. This is not a blame game at any point in time. We understand that these are difficult discussions, difficult decisions that will go forward. We understand that we need to increase revenue and/or decrease our expenditures so that we can continue to operate without any type of fear of state takeover. Even doing this $5.3 million worth of reductions and revenue generation, that will push us back to about 2029, 2030 before we run out of money. So that does push us back if the board determines tonight this is the direction that we are working on. There are no good, what I'm going to say, ways or means of picking and choosing when something must be looked at to be eliminated at. So, yes, we can discuss, we could argue, we could squabble over when that comes. What should it come this year, should come next year, should come the next year. So the recommendations that I'm bringing forth meet the requirements of what was asked of us to do. We have worked with our administrative team, our cabinet. We started this work prior to the levy actually being passed. Every year since I have been here, this is my 5th year being here, we have looked at our expenditures. We have looked at what we can reduce costs. We have looked at combining positions or eliminating positions. We've also looked at the audit, for instance. When you look at the Attorney General's audit that was conducted, we will meet almost every measure found in that audit. There are some measures that are not correct or accurate in that audit. A great example is the communications director. There was a huge mistake, and her fringe benefits and benefits were doubly counted. It was based on the full year, but they doubled it. So it looks like she's making more money that she needed. There's also misinformation in that audit that the Talawanda School District, me, or anybody here, can adjust the ticket gates for like sports, for instance, basketball, football, or whatever. Those are set by OHSAA and our league, which we can't do. There's also limitation with contract negotiations, when contracts come up, what you can and can't do. And then there's also federal requirements, state requirements, supplant. I don't want to make excuses, but I just want to let you know that there are some issues with the audit. However, when you look at this 3-year plan and this year, and you look at the audit, we're pretty close to hitting every metric measure that was in there and actually surpass in some areas. And in fact, over the last 5 years and since the audit, one of the recommendations, I'll go right off my head, was elimination of 11 teachers. We've done that. We're at 12.5. We also eliminated one administrator already. We've already eliminated 1.5 board office or administrators, staff members. And there's other staff that we have presented along the way throughout it. So I just want to make it clear that we are working on it. My direction from the board was always to look at attrition first, try to make it work and not impact the programming. We are moving towards state minimum. So as I make this plan and when I share these recommendations, understand there will be more recommendations coming forth. We will meet throughout the year. We will meet throughout the years. We will need to ensure that we're meeting these goals, and if we're not, we're going to have to make some other difficult decisions. If we are meeting and surpassing it, that may give us a little bit more leverage to make some other decisions throughout the year. So when you look at the recommendations, what you're going to see is, and I'm not going to put it up yet, I'm just explaining, that we're above the goal. Ms. Talfalski and myself and our administration team, we worked hard to be conservative with our numbers. We worked hard to ensure that we can meet these metrics. We understand that $5.3 million is a lot of money. Please note, as you're doing this, that busing has a TBD, to be determined on it. We are working on that. We're considering lots of measures. But I will tell you, there will be a savings in bus. Busing will be offered for K through 8. There will be no busing offered for 9 through 12, with the exception of students who receive mandated transportation, like special ed students. There are certain students that have to have that transportation, like wheelchairs and stuff like that are under IEPs. We also will be required to transport a shuttle service, which is different, a shuttle service for Butler Tech students. So that's grades 10 through 12. A shuttle service is determined that the students would have to meet. Right now we're meeting at Marshall, and that could change next year to the high school. It could stay at Marshall, but any high school student going to Butler Tech would have to get a ride there to that building, that site, and then we would shuttle them there. So that means private and parochial schools, charter schools in grades 9 through 12 would also not receive any type of transportation. Our transportation has to mirror what it is. We also will increase the 2-mile no transportation zone for busing. We are currently at 1 mile. That in particular is going to impact and affect Kramer and the middle school. We also know there are routes that are unsafe. So 2 miles may not work because the roads are just, there's highways, it's not okay. We have a group of administrators and Peterman staff that are working together. I also will explain this recommendation is not in there, but we're also looking at how do we reconfigure our elementary schools. Do we look at making one elementary school grade 3 through 5 and the other 2 elementaries pre-K through 2 and transport kids on the bus in grades 3 through 8 on one bus? So right now, there will be savings. There will be no, in the recommendation, I'll go over no extracurricular transportation as well. Each year, again, I can't reiterate, we will have to look at this because there could be things that come up. An example could be, especially, and I use the word special ed, or use the example special ed because I know that, I understand it. There's mandated caseloads. You can't go over certain caseloads, especially for self-contained, which is much lower. Our self-contained classrooms are at or almost at capacity in all of our areas. The minute you go over, some of the capacity routes are, capacities are like 8 students to a teacher and an aide. Once you hit 9, it doesn't matter if it's 9, you have to hire another teacher. I'm telling you that that could be a reality that comes next year or the year after. Now that would cost us money, a teacher and aide. So then we're going to have to go back and look at how we ensure that we still meet the metrics that have been put to us to reduce costs by 1.2, 1.7, and to $2.4 million in the 75,000 this year. So those types of things, while we hope that we can predict, you can't predict. The other thing is we also have some new subdivisions going in particular, Bogan and Marshall seeing some of that. We are seeing enrollment unprecedented since I've been here of as the houses are finished, that families are moving in and there's kids. So usually our enrollment slows down during this time and then it picks right up after the new year, but we've seen a steady stream of students moving in. We also have seen our class sizes increase in some areas as well. So again, we need to look at this framework and recommendations, and we will have to amend it to ensure we meet the board goals. We developed a plan that is not targeted at one group, one community, one department, or one area. One of the clear directions from the board when they gave us the numbers was to ensure that we could have equality or equity as much as we can. So it wasn't all at the elementary level. It wasn't all at the high school level. It wasn't all at student athletes. It wasn't all at gifted. It wasn't all at interventions. So you're going to see in this recommendations that are coming forward over the 3 years and this year that it's hitting almost every year. So Matt, I am going to ask you, we're just going to jump for a second, go to A1 and open it up for me, please. We're not going to vote on it, but I just want to show you so people can understand this. I know there was lots of questions and are lots of questions. We got a few coming in. Oh my God, look at that left-hand side. And on the left-hand side, there's lots of items listed. And when you go to the right-hand side, that column, sometimes there's a shaded area and sometimes there's not a shaded area. So the left-hand side represents almost all of the areas that we have considered. Our team worked together to prioritize what would go into this year, the first year, the second year, and the third year, and how much savings it would have. And again, we went with conservative estimates, and we went so that we had a little bit of a cushion, so if something happens, we can make moves. There are things that are listed that are not pulled across in any of those years. That is because those are the items that we may need to pull across to reach those critical marks. It also gives a foundation for a year 4 or a year 5 in the work that we need to do. There's also stuff on here that has to be negotiated. We cannot implement a recommendation that is required under state law or federal law or in our contracts to be negotiated and just impose it. It has to be negotiated. And sometimes the answer is no, or sometimes it's modified. And if that occurs, then we're also going to have to bring in other items to cover that expense on it. So in the second column is about how much money it would cost with those types of savings for it. If we exceed these projections, as I said, maybe we're able to move items back a year. Maybe we're able to make additional decisions. If we don't meet those marks, then we're going to have to bring in more or consider others. The voters were clear in the determination that we need to make cuts. I've heard some people talk, it is time for our community to come together no matter what it is. We are working forward together. We will make decisions to balance our budget. The concern that I have about it is we've got to stop the blame game or anything like that. We're moving forward. We could, as I said earlier, move some things from year 1 that you'll see into now, or year 3 into 2. All of that stuff could happen. We're also going to look at attrition. We're also going to look at natural resignations, and maybe we can save earlier as well. If this plan is approved tonight, we will start implementing the plan. The plan cannot start immediately like tonight at whatever time we get out, 10 p.m. We also still have to work some additional processes. For instance, if there's reductions in force, which there would be, we have to go through the reduction in force process. The reduction in force cannot be circumvented by any type. We have to follow the procedures. Remember, we have to, as I keep stating, we have to follow contracts, we have to follow state and federal mandates and district policies. But we are moving towards the state minimum. Right now, in our policy, for instance, our requirements for graduation are more than what the state requires. I am working with our HR, and we also have Neola, which we've talked about before, who helps us write the policies for that, to update our policy so it goes back down to the state minimums. That will free us up with some decisions. There's also a winter update coming in, so I didn't want to do that tonight, plus do it again in January or February when it's going to change, because there are some changes coming by the state. So now with this in there, we have an A1, an A2, an A3, and then we have a B1. The A1, 2, and 3, when we met at the work session, the board had some ideas about what would happen this school year. So 3 options are being provided tonight for the A1, A2, and A3. The budget recommendation was $75,000 worth of savings. So this is why this is a little bit different. We are going to vote on A1, and if A1 passes, that's it. We won't look at A2 or A3. If A1 fails, we will go to A2. If A2 passes, that's the end. If A2 fails, we will go to A3. And then eventually we will go to B1, which is year 1, 2, and 3. So now, before we even do that, I just want to go over some of this information. A1 option, which is my recommendation and does meet the $75,000 worth of savings, starts with adding a spring sports pay to play and no extracurricular busing. A2, or option 2, there is about $42,485 in dormant student funds, class funds. That means it's no longer used, those classes have gone on. So option 2, we can use that money to supplement the modified pay to play for spring with no busing, still no busing, and this too meets the $75,000 goal that was set. My recommendation, but again, the board can choose to do it, is not to use the $42K for this. I think we could use the $42K in future needs. Option 3, A3, this option just eliminates the busing for the spring extracurriculars and uses the 42 dormant fees to help meet the goal. However, this goal does not, this money saved does not meet the $75,000 goal. So we would be short about $16,000, $15,936. Next, the board will also be voting on, and I want to go over this before it. So Matt, can you pull up B1 now for me, please?
Why don't we dispense with the A first?
Do you want to vote? Because I
Yes.
wanted everybody to hear the whole thing, but I'm okay with that if you want.
Well, this
to.
way you can have a breath.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So hang on, Matt, go back to A1, please. Sorry, give him a second to pull it up. There it is. So at this point in time, it is my recommendation that the board approve option A1.
Okay. So at this point, you all know if you want it 1, 2, or 3, hopefully. If you don't want A1 and it doesn't get a motion, it dies, and we can go right to the second one. So,
The President, just to clarify, A1 is the whole thing starts in the spring.
yes.
A2, this is for everyone in the audience. A2 is a modified pay-to-play by utilizing the dormant funds,
Yes.
but otherwise everything else
Yes.
stays the same. And then option 3 is everything is delayed for the fall except for no busing. There will be no busing starting in the spring, but everything else
Starting- correct.
starts next school year.
Correct. Yes.
So,
Yeah, David, so to answer that question, the A1 is pay to play at like $500, and then the middle school's a little lower.
Correct.
A2 pay to play is
Correct.
much lower than that.
Because of the dormant
Because of the dormant funds.
correct.
Then
And
3
then,
is
and then
just
3
busing.
doesn't save the amount of money that we wanted to save. It just eliminates busing for spring sports. Okay.
That's correct.
Mr.
So-
Bothus, option 3 was the no busing and the dormant funds. I think I
Well-
missed hearing that from you, so I want to make sure that you know that it's the dormant funds as well.
So how about we do this, one thing. So Matt, I'm going to go through it. So we have A1 on, correct? So A1, you can see the 2 shaded areas, the 2 top shaded areas. Matt, scroll all the way down to the bottom, please, of that one. you will see the total potential savings and that it meets the $75,000 for that, okay? Matt, can you show A2, please? So A2, you can see, I'm going to pull it up just because my screen's smaller than yours and I can't read it. So A2 has the $22,000 for the pay to play and the $16,000 for eliminating the bus for spring. And then when you go all the way down to the bottom, it uses the $42,000. And we hit the metric again, exceeding the $75,000. We okay so far?
Yeah, so far.
Okay. A3, please. And I'm going to have to pull that up. My eyes are a little bit older. Okay. A3, you're going to see on the top, it eliminates the busing for extracurricular for busing. So that's a savings of about $16,000. Go down to the bottom. We will use the $42,000. There won't be there won't be pay to play in that fee mark, and that would be a loss or under $15,936 to meet that $75,000 mark. Did everybody, is everyone okay? So now let's go back to A1, Matt. This is something different we're doing, and I get that, so I wanted to make sure I was clear, precise, the community sees what's going on too and understands the discussion.
Can I ask, typically when we're doing votes, we do discussion after the motion.
We are correct, but I am
Correct.
explaining and providing
Right, so-
information. So
correct,
now
so-
we're going to move, so now you will be able to ask questions or stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we don't get a motion on the first one, we'll eventually have a discussion. We get a motion and a second on one of them,
Yeah.
right? And-
Hopefully we get one on one of
Right,
them.
okay. So, with that being said, can I get a motion to approve 7D, which is option A1?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. A second. Okay. Seeing that it doesn't have a second, we will move on. Can I get a motion to approve 7E, which is option A2?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Can I get a second? I will second that one. So now, are there questions and/or discussion?
Yes, again, at the work session, I understand your point, Dr. Throw, about wanting to hold those dormant funds for a possible future application, but I think I'm just going to respectfully disagree on that. I think if we've got those funds available, we need to apply them as we have them now. Those of you who were at the work session heard me talk about this. I'm the one who came up with this dormant funds idea, and I did that largely because I really have a problem with instituting pay to participate for athletes and musicians whose families have already made plans to participate this year without an anticipation of having to pay anything for it. So I'm concerned that, I mean, all of this, we have to recognize all of this, yes, puts a burden on families and on the community. I am not happy with imposing that burden right now basically with no forewarning. So that's why, again, my recommendation, am I allowed to talk about A3 now when we're not on A3? No, I can only talk about A2.
But we'll
Okay.
vote on this one.
Okay.
I'm supporting this one because it hits the mark that we set, but it's less of a burden for families who didn't budget for it at the beginning of the school year. So it meets both, it hits our goal and it's less of a burden, and I appreciate the dormant funds being available for this, although I get that, it's a question mark about whether you should spend dormant funds in this way. But anyway, that's why I'm supporting it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Or
Mrs. Trafalski, with this one being, if we were to utilize the dormant funds, that would drop the pay-to-play threshold to what level again?
170 for high school.
For the high school and 85 for the middle school.
Thank you for that.
85 for middle school.
Sorry, I had to find the spreadsheet real quick.
Okay.
I have it. That is correct. High school would have $170 for the spring sport. Middle school would have $85 for the spring sport.
And
that includes band.
I was going to say, that does
Thank you.
include band, so everyone needs to know that.
Yes.
Okay. Any other?
But still doesn't include busing.
No busing.
No busing. Any other questions, discussion? Okay, if you would call the roll, Mr. Fauski.
Dr. Knight Abwitz.
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes.
Mr. Bothus.
Yes.
Dr. Howard.
No.
Mr. Otto.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to 7G.
Okay. So Matt, could you please put up 7G? So again, we will not vote on option A3 because we have an answer for it. So now we're moving to the 3-year plan. All right. So the system is set up the same way. Matt, if you can go to the other handout, the next attachment, I shouldn't say handout, the next attachment instead of that. So this one, Dr. Howard had combined the areas so you can see them a little bit closer. They're grouped together to make it a little bit easier. Remember, the left-hand side is all the ideas and possibly additional areas that can come in. The other thing that I want to explain, if we make a cut in year 1, if it is not listed in year 2 and 3, that money is accounted for. So it would not be, we're doing a $1.2 million reduction or goal in year 1. So if we counted that again in year 2, in year 3, we're actually not saving an additional 1.7 or 2.4. So that's why it's not carried across. Except if you look at the very top one, it says any hirings. When we're looking at hirings and replacing people that have left, we have put in a mark to save through attrition, combining positions, hiring at lower cost, $100,000 for that 1 year. And then in year 2, we'll do it all again, and then there'll be another $100,000. And then year 3 would be another $100,000. You're also going to see that with, I have to pull it up, $150,000 for the curriculum. So that doesn't, so each year we have a curriculum adoption cycle. There is an amount attached to it. It's different each year depending on which departments are coming. So we are going to reduce those curriculum adoptions in year 1 by $150,000. In year 2, those departments that are up for it in year 2, $150,000. In year 3, those departments that are up in year 3 by $150,000. So in year, if you look at that first column, again, there's going to be no extracurricular busing. There's going to be pay-to-play fees, and I'm going over this generally. We're eliminating 2 media positions. We're reducing the building budgets by another 20%. We're eliminating 1 teacher position that is hired through the Butler County ESC. We are eliminating 3 elementary SROs. I already talked about transportation. Transportation will be K through 8, no 9 through 12, and a 2-mile no transportation zone. We talked about the curriculum adoption being reduced by 150. We will move a business teacher from the high school to the middle school and not fill the middle school. We are filling the middle school, but we're not going to fill the high school position. So it is a loss of one person. We will eliminate one secretarial position at the board office, which is at the PDC. We have two secretaries in our front office. Their positions will be reduced by 20%. Again, I talked about the hirings and filling back in and saving at least $100,000. And the savings for that exceeds the $1.2 million by about $69,000. Again, we're going to continue to look at our busing, because I just explained that we may have another idea for grade level. I don't think we will have it ready for next year, but if we do, that would be great. You will also note on there that CBI has been listed twice. CBI has been listed to be eliminated in year 1 and then in year 3. By moving that business teacher from the high school down, meets that $75,000, so we will be able to consider eliminating that Butler Tech CBI position in year 2 or 3. Right now it'll be listed in 3. So we will also clean this up once I know the decision. So we will take out all of this extra stuff so you will just see it. But I think it was important, and I understand when we posted the agenda, people didn't understand it. They're seeing all this left-hand stuff, and some stuff's in it, some stuff isn't in it. How did we get there? So we're hoping that this will explain it. In year 2, 2024-25 school year, we will move 2 of the teaching and learning teachers, which are the instructional coaches, back into the classroom. We will eliminate 1 middle school and 1 high school elective. We will continuing that hiring and refilling and saving $100,000. We will eliminate the van driver. We are hoping maybe we can get a grant for that. We'll investigate the possible outsourcing of custodians for the other 3 buildings. Right now we have Kramer and high school that are outsourced. Again, that's a negotiated item. So that's why, if that did not go through, we would need to look and draw from other areas to ensure that we meet that amount. We will eliminate another SRO at the middle school, so now we will only have 1 SRO in the district. We'll eliminate $150,000 in curriculum adoption. We will eliminate the STEM teacher, the STEM program. That STEM teacher will go back into the classroom. We will increase class sizes. We will be doing that in year 1, 2, and 3. We will eliminate the recess monitors, but again, we have some contract obligations, which is only fair and right. For instance, staff have to have a 30-minute lunch, so we'll have to plan that. We will eliminate all of the gifted except for the gifted coordinator. Again, going back to the state minimums, we are not mandated to provide gifted services. We are mandated to test and identify students who are gifted, so we will need that coordinator. We are mandated to do early entrance type of exams for some students. So there will be work that we have to do, but we don't have to provide the gifted services. We will eliminate 3 social workers. We have 4 social workers now. 1 social worker at the middle school and high school is done by 1 person, and then we have the 3 at the elementary. We will eliminate all other extracurriculars in year 2024-25. Now, if the community comes through and is able to help fund or pay for that, we could possibly implement some of those. We will eliminate a foreign language. We'll combine TOL and another, like study hall. We will reestablish tuition for full kindergarten day. State mandate is half-day kindergarten. We used to have this and we used to pay for that, and it used to be on a sliding scale. So the total here for the year 2, our goal was 1.7, we're 1.9 to $1 million. So we're about 220 some million, not million, $220,000 over. Year 3, 25-26. The deeps are very steep. The cuts and reductions are becoming very steep at this point in time. We will eliminate a pre-K supervisor. We will continue to 100K hiring, trying to save there. We will look at shortening the elementary day so that the staff get the required planning times and eliminate art, music, and PE at the elementary grades. Again, going to state mandates, those aren't required. We will eliminate another high school and middle school elective. We will not fill grade level department supplementals. We will reduce the curriculum adoption, as we stated earlier, by another 150,000. We will eliminate one high school and a half position that's called SAP, which does the interventions and monitoring and helping with the interventions. We, of course, will increase class sizes. We will eliminate 2 psychologists. Currently, we have 5 psychologists. We have one for each building. This means psychologists who have been very important with our safety issues and getting ahead. Their focus, they have to do testing, they have to be involved with ETRs, IEPs, and there's some other stuff that they have that is required and mandated. We will eliminate the 3 elementary counselors, again, going back to state mandates. We are required and will need counselors at the middle school and high school, especially with the graduation requirements, because if we don't have that, we could have students that fall through the cracks and not have the right credits or meet the state standards to graduate. We will eliminate Butler Tech satellite programs, such as FFA, FCLA, and the CBI that I mentioned earlier. How is this a savings? Isn't Butler Tech free? No, it is not free. So, again, I've talked about school funding for a long time. I believe in Butler Tech. I believe in the work that they do. Students will still have an option to go and apply, and if chosen through the lottery, attend Butler Tech. And I love the idea that they can do those programs. Butler Tech does provide staff members and teachers for these programs. The problem is our state funding and how the state funding works. We're on a guarantee of $2,500, which we receive for each student. When a student goes into a satellite program, for instance, that is a student that's removed from one of our electives, which then our class sizes aren't filled, which creates an issue with filling our electives, which we're also going to look, as I mentioned earlier, to reduce electives, and also the amount of money we receive for those students. This is a funding issue too. So I don't want people pointing fingers at each other if you voted or didn't vote for the levy. This is what really needs to be addressed. And here's a prime example. Me. I am a student at Talawanda High School. I am at the high school, and I receive for the state share, the guaranteed state share of $2,500 that comes back to Talawanda. I apply and I get accepted and I go to Butler Tech. Butler Tech, that same student, now is more valuable and receives almost $6,000 per student. Same student. Now, I'm not asking to take away money from other schools, but I am saying this is something that we need to focus in on as we're talking about these cuts. On my soapbox and pedestal, because even living within the means, district to district, students' state share is different. There isn't a basic level of education, which I propose, an amount, whatever that amount is. Is it 6,000? Is it 7,000? I don't know what it is, but I think easily people could figure that out and put it in. So no matter where you are in Ohio, you would get that amount. And then if you're special ed or maybe you have some additional needs, you could have some additional funding on top of that. But going back to this, there is savings by removing these outstanding programs. We will eliminate one assistant principal. We will eliminate all extracurriculars at this point in time. So in year 3, there's no extracurriculars, including all extracurriculars. Well, how is that a reduction? Because they're doing pay to play. Well, what happens with that is we then will eliminate the 1.5 AD positions, and we will also eliminate the AD secretary, so there is a savings. We will eliminate extended days. We will eliminate the facilities director position. We will replace 4 of our nurses with health aides and try to go through Butler County Educational Service Center. We know that we have some students with medical needs, and in their IEP, those needs actually absolutely will be taken care of. But the requirement, state mandate, is to have 1 district nurse. That's what we're going back to. Those savings come to 3.177 and some change. So we are over 777,000. So there is some room to have discussion if we meet the metrics all the way through from this spring to year 1 to year 2 and year 3. In addition, we're going to increase the parking passing for high school students. That'll increase by $50 to $100 per semester. We looked at outsourcing food service, and unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, there's no savings. There's no savings that we can find in food service. I'm glad that we have our own people. Hear me on that. We can't reduce anymore. We're getting to the state minimum. We're getting to the minimums to be able to use it, but there's no savings that we're going to be able to do. We're going to add a TOL fee. TOL saves many students and gets them across the finish line for graduation. We have an amazing educational assistant who gives her heart and soul to this. We will charge $250 per semester. They can take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classes. We have some that are doing remediation. We have some that are trying to get ahead so that they can free up their schedule and take other classes. We will be adding a $250 fee for AP, plus the testing fee remains in place. That will be, again, in year 3. The audit conducted a few years ago was incorporated into these recommendations, as we have just talked about and started about it. And again, as I stated earlier, we've covered almost all of the areas by the end of year 3. You will not see the busing savings listed yet, but there will be busing savings that may help us make some additional savings. Again, I reiterate, busing will only be provided for K-8 students and students with special ed needs, and a Butler Tech students shuttle will be provided. There will be no extracurricular busing, including field trips. Talawanda's per mile transportation is about $3.60 per mile. And I know there's a question that came to us and the board, and I want to thank Dr. Howard for responding on this. Our busing per mile is pretty good when you do a comparison of surrounding and other districts. The problem comes, we are a large geographic area. So even though we may be on the lower side, when you look at how many miles our buses have to try to pick up a student, it jumps to $1,508 per student, which is much higher than many school districts, our similar school districts, as well as our neighboring school districts. And I know there was some pushback as, why are we including our neighbor school districts when we talked about similar? Well, we've included both, similar and neighboring districts in all of this to talk about that. So there are some things that we can't change. We're also increasing the transportation time. We've tried to keep it around an hour or less. I have put in the parameters that we will look at 2 hours and less, not going over 2 hours. You will see all of these on this agenda. We will also, as I say, provide you with additional information going on, and we will, once the vote does make it a little bit more concise so that it's easier to read. These recommendations are difficult. In fact, as a superintendent, it goes against some of my own beliefs and thoughts. However, I am tasked with a job, and I am coming through with recommendations that I hope this board will pass tonight. We will continue to evaluate, continue to adjust, but it gives us the $5.3 million worth of savings over the next 3 years. Even with these recommendations, we will continue to need to evaluate and continue these reductions in savings. Because we will start to be in deficit spending again after these 3 years because of how the state funding is and not increasing. We also need to consider if the guarantee goes away, and I've talked to the board about this, and I've talked to the community. If the guarantee goes away, we move from $2,500 to a little over $1,100 per student. If that occurs, we're going to have to make steeper cuts to make sure that we're balancing. Again, we will review, we will keep letting the community know. Our treasurer does an amazing job with having all of this information in our own financials on our treasurer website. And it's important to watch the videos or come to the board meetings if you can. It's important to look at the treasurer website and our website for information because it's there. And we have made savings in the past. I know our staff is anxious and worried. I also know what great services they provide. I also know Talawanda will look different. With that, I want to ensure that the board has this information, community has this information, and that they can understand the charts so that they're able to effectively vote on B1. So I think what we would do is see if there's a discussion part.
All right.
I just needed to provide details so you can understand. Yep,
All right, so you are recommending that we approve the budget
B1.
reductions as listed in the chart? Does that include the things about TLL and AP, et cetera?
Yes.
Because those do not have a year on them?
Nope. They will start next year. Understand that those go into a different fund. But, for instance, like our parking lots have to be updated. They have to be striped, lined. So that is some of the information why we're doing. We are cutting the building budgets, for instance, by 20%. We still have to do graduation service. It's great. We need to do graduation service. It costs us money to rent hall, to do all this. So some of
I
those.
was just
funds
asking
go
for a
into-
clarification. We're going to go on.
Yep.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve 7G, which is the recommendation, budget reductions, and revenue enhancements?
So moved.
Thank you. Dr. Abwoods, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Bothas. Now, any questions or discussion?
$1,000 in savings on the Butler Tech program. Specify what that money is.
So that's what I talked about. So that is, we wouldn't have those teachers in our building. It will also bring back that money that goes to Butler Tech because it was portioned out. It also will push kids back into our own electives. So what's happening is, right now, we have a lot of electives, and we have not max amount of numbers. We need to maximize those numbers, bring them in, bring the funding in. And Shauna, I know you did the figures for it.
So, Dr. Knight-Abwitz, every time a student attends one of the Butler Tech program, the classes within the high school, the funding flows to the Butler Tech organization. So it's diverted from TSD to Butler Tech. So if those programs are eliminated and the students then are in our classrooms, we will get that funding. What was not determined was what percentage of students might open roll out to, find another Butler or find a school district that does offer the Butler Tech programs. It did not take into consideration if Butler Tech decided to open up another program on their main campus, which would allow additional lottery slots. It did not take any of that into consideration in doing this. It also didn't take into consideration the guarantee, nor if state funding, if we fall off the guarantee. So literally, it was just taking this year's full-time equivalent multiplied by $2,500.
Yeah, I don't know how we could predict, that there's going to be a change because we don't know. There may not be a change.
Second question, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh. Facility director position.
So that position, right now, we would look at possibly eliminating in year 3. And again, we would have to take over the rest of the people that are standing in administrator some of those duties. And then go to the bottom, Kathleen, just real quick. Matt, too, if you, you don't have to. There's $777,000. That position can come back. The art, music, PE, maybe not come back. There is room if we are careful, meet these needs, save these money to bring some of these back or push them back a year. But again, my goal was to hit the mark and have a cushion so that we could make these. And there were steep cuts. And I clearly heard people say, cut administration, not just from here. But.
Any other questions? Dr. Howard, I know you.
Yeah, I have a couple of things.
Sure.
One is also just to clarify, because I've had this question that if we institute pay to participate, but participation drops, then it won't be that amount, but this amount is predicted based on, you already did that prediction.
I already did that.
That is a 50% reduction in participation.
Correct.
But again, I want to be honest with this, okay? What happens if there's I'm making this up because I don't know. There's a 75% drop off, right? If that were to occur, we're going to have to go back. That's why there's a little bit of a cushion, or we're going to have to pull something in from the left-hand column so that we can hit that goal. So I believe, and we looked at Ross, I have contacts in Ross, as everybody knows, and they did not see a 50% drop off, but they did see a drop off. So I think, honestly, conservatively, we will be hitting that mark.
The other question I had has to do also with things that are affected by participation in the pay to participate. And it's not clear, just looking at these numbers, I think it's not clear to community members, and it certainly wouldn't have been clear to me before I got on the board, that how we, because there's nothing on here that says anything about coaches. So we have a lot of coaches. So I did not completely understand how we pay coaches in relation to teaching positions or not teaching positions. So if you could clarify that a little bit as well.
So of course I'm going to be lengthy. So coaching supplementals or extracurricular supplementals are separate from a job. A teaching job, a classified job, custodian, teacher, any of those. So they are not tied together with the exception of there's some music ones, because it makes sense. Music teacher and band, for instance, marching band, that they're tied in. But the majority of the supplementals are not tied into a contract. The other thing I want to explain by that, so if we eliminate a teaching position or a classified position and that person holds, let's say a coaching position, that only eliminates, not that it only, it eliminates their day job, so to speak. They still could hold and do the coaching position beyond that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, yeah.
The other thing I want to say to you is the extracurriculars that we're talking about are found in our Teacher Education Association contract. So it's negotiated. Rates are negotiated when the contracts come up. There are steps in there. So there's certain ways that we can fill positions, not fill positions. And of course, we have drug testing, we have background checks, all of that stuff has to be done. So if a person is riffed or loses his or her job, but holds a coaching supplemental, he or she possibly could continue that. But then if we get into year 3 and we're at the point of eliminating all, they would not have.
Also, kind of along with that, I think there's some confusion around, and you've mentioned this in a couple of different ways, like the ELL services through BCESC, and we've got a teaching position through BCESC. So we have some things that are funded that are not part of the TEA teacher contract. Here, they're funded through BCESC. Butler County Educational Services.
They're not funded by them.
We pay.
No, I mean, we pay them, I'm sorry, they're
I get what
hired
you're
through
saying.
BCESC.
So they're called purchase services.
Right.
So we purchase the service through Butler County Educational Service Center. So right now we do not with our English language learners or English as a second language. Right now we have tutors and we have a teacher. The teaching position would remain at this point in time, but we have tutors, and we could hire that out through Butler County ESC. And when we hire through Butler County ESC, we get a savings because they pay less for that. Their benefits are different if they qualify for benefits and stuff like that. So yes, we have a few positions in there. And as you mentioned, there's one in year 1 for a teacher position at the high school. And then as you talked about the ELL, that also roll up
there. Dr. Thoreau, so I have a question for you, and particularly you too, Mr. Mead, because you have such a good relationship with Butler Tech as well. Does cutting these programs with Butler Tech impact any future relationships with Butler Tech? Does this prohibit us from having a seat at the table when it comes to putting students in these programs, maybe once we do recover?
Well, it always could, and I don't want to say that it's not. I will tell you that Superintendent John Graff is an amazing superintendent who's courteous, wants to work with us. I can tell you I've been in communication with him, so he understands what's happening here and what would happen. Our students still will have the ability to apply for limited seats through a lottery operation to attend Butler Tech. And I'm clear to say that because just because you apply for it as a student, I would like to say 100% of our students get in. That is not accurate. They don't have enough room for that. Could they say if these are all removed in year 3 and suddenly we have a revenue stream that comes in year 4 or 5 or somewhere else, say, I'm sorry, I don't want to do that because that is the cost of Butler Tech. They absolutely could say that and not put satellite classes in our district. But I do know Butler Tech, the superintendent, really wants what's best for kids and wants to develop the workforce. So whether going to Butler Tech or through the satellite programs, I think they would do their best, but I can't make a guarantee that they would open the doors back up. I just can't.
I would think, having worked for them for 30 years and knowing how it works down there, if they make money on the program, they'll bring it back. The bottom line is, they run programs that make money, and if the program doesn't make money, they cut that program. So the money they get from the state for FFA is more than they need to run the FFA program and pay the teacher. And when the FFA doesn't have enough students and they don't have enough money, they will cut that program. So if we cut those programs and in 2 years come back and say, we are willing to take them back because we now have more funding, and it doesn't matter that 220,000 of our dollars got funneled to you because we're in better shape and we want these options for the kids, they'll look at it and say, yes, because we can make money. We know we can fill FFA and FCCLA back up. and the CBI program. But I would caution everybody, we're voting on this in the 3 columns, first year, second year, third year. And first year is pretty much going to happen. I will say there, you have to be careful, Dr. Throw, you said something about CBI in the first year and the third year. There are 2 different CBI programs. The one you're talking about in the first year is the 8th grade program, and the one you're talking about in the third year is the senior program. And
So-
those are different things.
Hang on a second. But the 8th grade program will be moved to year 3. The
Right, if-
$75,000. So when I say CBI, it will be in year 3.
Okay, with-
We could
with
move it
the
up.
other one. I know,
We could
I
move
get
it up,
that.
but it's not going to be
Right.
in year 1 because we hit that 75,000
Right.
mark.
And so year 1's going to be pretty set, but we will have time to come back after we see what happens on the ground, if we're saving more or less, and look at year 2 and say, we can move some things back, or we need to add some things. And when we look at year 3, which is basically is Armageddon, hopefully we can move some things back.
Exactly.
And because we'll be
Exactly.
saving more than we think we are, or
Exactly.
the state will do something with funding, or the community will do something with funding. So when people see something in year 3, and you want to put your house up for sale now, I would say wait a year to put your house up for sale and find a different district, because that may not happen. Year 1 will happen. Year 2, hopefully the voters have one chance to say, yes, we want year 2 to happen. And then maybe they get one more chance to say, yeah, we want year 3 to happen. But I think, and we obviously have way more savings in year 3 than we need, so we can determine some things about FFA or Butler Tech programs, or art, music, and phys ed for grade schoolers, for gosh sake. And so we're making a plan, but with all plans, when you get on the ground and implement it, as any coach will tell you, or general, it will change based on what happens on the ground. So if we accept this, it doesn't mean it doesn't get revisited in the future by the board.
And Mr. Mead, I know we're running late, and I know everyone's wanting to get home, but I also know that this is the first time that many out there
Oh,
are
yes.
going to see this. We've labored over this a lot, and we know what the intricacies are, but I think we haven't been able to talk about this until recent times. So I think people need to know what the 3-year forecast could be possibly. But as they say, this too shall pass. I don't want to do anything that would cut off our nose to spite our face, if it's a relationship that we have with something
Right.
that we want to sustain eventually.
agree.
One thing that I am concerned about this, especially with all the mental health conversations surrounding COVID from our constituency and the community, of all types, losing SROs and at the same time losing an assistant principal and at the same time losing counselors. That's a trifecta that I think is very dangerous in these times. That's all kind of on the slate.
It absolutely is. I understand your concerns. I have the exact same concerns. But again, we have to teach reading. We have to teach math. We will increase class size. We will look at attrition. We will look at combining classes to, get that increase. But you're going to have to go deeper to get this amount of money. And my hope is, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm hoping that the townships, the city of Oxford may come in and say, hey, we'll pay for the SROs. We have other communities that do that. We will ensure that there's an SRO in each building versus the school paying for
Right,
it.
I believe the Ross Township stepped up and chipped in, took
That is
more of the
correct.
responsibility from the school district for their SROs, since, the school's tasked with educating young people in the township. One of their tasks is to provide public safety, same with the city and the county. So hopefully, just because we're eliminating it, doesn't mean we can't investigate ways to keep that service. Just like the van driver the second year, we can investigate ways to get grants to continue that. Obviously, you can't get grants and stuff to fund everything that's here. But there are some things, hopefully we can find other ways to continue to provide those services through other funding methods, who have some responsibility in this too.
And that's the painting I want to paint as a school teacher in the classroom right now, you're increasing class sizes, reducing resources and services, reducing counseling services, reducing extracurriculars where students can go and vent and burn off frustration. You're reducing support security services. This is a very
Painful.
I think everyone knows what picture I'm painting.
Mr. Botha, I think the people sitting at this table and most of the people sitting out there know that, Talawanda is a pretty special school district. And the taxpayers are right. We do more for our students than other districts do, period. We do more for the kids who can achieve more, and we give them more opportunity to develop their gifts, and be successful in life. We also do more for the students who need more. But the message is do less.
And for
live within this budget you have. We asked for money to continue to do those things, and the message was don't do those things, and this is a result. And it is very sad. I'm going to vote yes on this, and it goes against everything I believe in about education and children and community and our role to one another, our responsibility to one another, especially young people. But there's a reality that we, the board, don't have the money to continue to do the things we know are the right thing to do. I'll get off my soapbox, sorry. Any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to thank Dr. Thoreau and Ms. Felsky for really working long hours, I know, to put these numbers together. I do appreciate feedback from the community. As we move forward, I want to continue that conversation. I also want to say that the first year I was on the board was the COVID year, and the meeting that we had where we had to decide on remote learning was a very emotional meeting, and I thought after that meeting, that's going to be the hardest thing I have to do on this board. And you know what? Here I am again thinking I am very unhappy about this, but we have to do what we have to do, and this is what we have to do. So I want everybody to know that we don't do this lightly. We don't do this we don't make these choices with any joy, but we will do the job we have to do in order to get our finances where we've been told they should be, so.
And just one last thing, and I will shut up at this point, but I'll tell you, looking at this, and this is just to be 100% transparent because I believe in that, this isn't our saving grace, friends. This is just to remain solvent. We're still going to be deficit spending even after all this.
Mr. Botha, I have to reiterate that, and I know Shauna can join in. This does not save us. In 2029, 2030, depending on how we go and how we hit it, we will be out of money again. We will be deficit spending. So while this is a 3-year plan, we will need, I'm saying there's no other changes. I am saying we are going to have to continue to look at this plan in year 4 and year 5 with additional reductions to keep it pushing it out beyond 2030. That is correct.
I will step in and say that actually, based on if the forecast stays true, and we know that it does not because it's very hard to predict, further than 2 years out, with these reductions, we would have 63 days worth of cash at the end of fiscal year 31.
Which is problematic. You can't be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm right on track with my thoughts. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anything else? Just one last comment, and I know people are going to lose their jobs this year or next year. And I just want those people to know this has nothing to do with you. Our staff up and down the line do a great job. And so I want you to know we appreciate what you're doing, and I apologize for what's happening to you. If you would call the roll, Mr. Felsky.
Dr. Knight Abwoods,
Yes.
Mr. Bothus, Dr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Otto,
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
I just need to take a
Go-
breath for a second.
yeah.
All right. I do have some good news. So the next item, I am asking that the board approve an early graduation for Joe Noel Shannon, who has met and completed all graduation requirements and is going to graduate early so that he can start and move it on with his next part of his life. And he will be able to receive his diploma on 12/16/2022.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve 7H?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. In a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Any questions, comments? Okay, would you call the roll, Mr. Fauski?
Mr. Otto,
Yes.
Mr. Bothus,
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abwoods,
Yes.
Dr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I know Joe's not here. Congratulations. And I know our staff, Stephanie Jones, and our staff will, high school staff will let him know and his parents know.
Great.
Next, I am asking for the approval of an overnight camp trip for Kramer Elementary students to go to Camp Campbell Guard on May 22nd, 23rd. Please, this is an overnight.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve 7I?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Second, thank you, Dr. Abwoods, for jumping on that. I appreciate it. Any questions? You can call the roll, Shauna.
Mr. Bothus,
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abwoods,
Yes.
Dr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Otto,
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The next one is just informational only. 2 times a year, we have to report bullying information. The information is provided. While there are 0 reports for each of the building for the bullying with the definition, that does not mean there hasn't been 0 discipline. That does not mean we don't have work to do with teaching expectations, reinforcing positive behaviors. And I think you have seen, especially some great initiative. We have been working to improve our social and emotional well-being, our positive behaviors, how to interact even with COVID. Our graduation rate since I came here was 92%, up to 96.6% because some of these other things that we're doing. I know if you're at the high school, you will notice a big change in positive behavior intervention sports and positive reports being emailed or given to families. We have the packs at the elementary, middle school. So you're seeing a lot of positives. So I want to just reiterate, just because there's 0 events in the bullying doesn't mean we don't have issues still to address. But we are making some huge strides in working and teaching the expectations and reinforcing the expectations and holding people accountable. So next, I'm going to.
Well,
Go ahead.
I just want to thank everybody who's, I mean, what you're talking about is culture change.
Yes, it
And that's
is.
very hard, and it's long-term work.
Yes, it is.
So no one report says everything, but I just want to commend everybody who's involved with that, because everybody has to be involved with that at every level. So I just appreciate it. It's significant.
So again, I know you're not thanking me. I don't want, because it's not me,
No,
it's not Shauna.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
It really is our administrators, our support staff, our teachers,
Yep.
our classified staff, our custodians, our secretaries, and I don't mean to leave anybody, our food service workers.
Yep.
Is everybody working towards this common goal. And it, as you said, has taken a long time to get this culture changed, and now we're making some changes with that are going to be impacted. Informational items. Are we okay for me to move on?
You're good.
All right.
Move right
Informational items. You may have heard there's a measles outbreak in Columbus. Why am I bringing this up? Right now, it has not. I do not know of any measles in our county. However, I have met with the Butler County Commissioner. We have prepared a plan. with our district nurse and what we will need to do in our administrators. This is important to note. If we have a measles case in one of our buildings, we have children who are not vaccinated, who cannot be vaccinated, whatever you want, or chose not to be vaccinated. So you may get a notification stating you cannot send your child to school because your child's not vaccinated. And that may be a time period because we're seeing in Columbus that it is just spreading a little bit more in northern Ohio. So I want people just to be prepared and have a plan B for it. It's another thing that's coming in. The other thing I want to talk about, which we didn't talk about, there's been some questions about why didn't we share these plans, the A and the B, this year and the next 3 years, in advance of the levy. So I wanted to explain that there's been changes. There's been changes to what superintendents, treasurers, boards, staff can and cannot do with levies. So Attorney Beverly Mayer gave us a training on what we can and cannot do. I can tell you there is a Butler County school that just got resolved, and it hasn't been reported, but they were going for a levy, and the superintendent promoted a plan in place that could have been considered a threat, could have been considered coercing is some of the terms. That superintendent actually was charged and arrested, and I know there was a final disposition for the outcome, and it will also, ODE will also write guidelines that I think will come out in January, but we could not put a plan out before the levy. Our board understood this. Our board followed the recommendation. Superintendent and treasurer, and I've stated this before, are considered 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week employees. They can give the facts, just the facts, man. Was that car 59 or something? Some of us that are old might know that. But just the facts, and we cannot sway or say, vote yes for it. Our board members could when they're not in like a board session. Our teachers, our staff members absolutely could do it when they're not on work time. We also had to be careful of devices. We have computers here that are provided by the board, Talawanda, education. So in there, we also have to be careful of email, social media, and stuff like that, and what we're using, spacing, times like that. We followed it. I know, I'm in good confidence that we followed it, and now you're hearing a plan. And I believe a multi-year plan gives people the option to start making decisions. While I don't want anybody jumping boats, so to speak, and leaving, I understand that they have families and that they're going to need to make their own decisions. It's a very difficult decision that you guys have just made. But providing that plan moves us forward. As I have stated earlier, since I've been here, we've been working on cuts, reductions, keeping programs in place. I can tell you the previous board, the previous treasurer, and the previous superintendent has also done that as well. And I will reiterate, there is a state funding problem. It is still unconstitutional, and it's a problem that we need to not turn in on ourselves, but join forces and ask our representatives, our legislators, for changes. You know there is a district south of us, adjacent to us, who is struggling big time. They're facing state takeover in 2 years. We have another school district that you will be hearing very shortly that's right on their heels. We are not, but we're going. We're going down that same path. So why are we using our adjacent school districts as some of our comparison? Because it is a problem. Our rural schools, I'm going to call us rural, even though we have a college in the city of Oxford, and our surrounding schools are facing the same issues. Even though they're spending less, they are hitting it faster. Doesn't make it easier, doesn't make it right, I hope we can come together. I hope we will stop the blaming. We still have people blaming each other. People love schools. People love kids. I'm not going to argue that. There's no argument in that. How we do it, how we meet the goals, we're moving forward. So now's the time. Let's focus our energy on our legislators. Let's get this funding formula fixed. And it's not just for us, it's for every student. And I talked about a basic foundational formula. $2,500 is not acceptable to be able to educate a student. And then you go to another district and they get $6,000 because those students, I guess, are worth more. Or to another district and it's worth less. So I'm back on my soapbox. We need to determine what that amount is to educate a child, and every student should have it. It should not be pitting schools, districts, communities against each other, and that's what's happening. It's happening to this board, that, they're looking at the board making difficult decisions. Well, I will tell you, if the state share for it was $7,000, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. Neither would many of the other schools. And to me, that's a low funding ratio, to be honest, per student. We are diverting money to charter schools, to other schools, to voucher system, and it is problematic. Again, I don't want to take money away from other schools. I'm not out to pit myself against, pick a school district, a public school district. Personally, I believe it's a dismantling of public education, purposely designed so that we in-house fight versus directing where we need to direct. And I keep saying that over and over because I want people to hear it. We need to direct our efforts towards our legislators. And not just one time, not just for a month, but we got to keep going until we get change. Because our kids are what the world's about. Our kids are what our community's about. Nobody wants to hurt a kid. Nobody wants to talk about these cuts and reductions. So again, yes, we have been working on it. Yes, we will continue to work on it, and we will continue to revise. And I want to thank people for listening to me keep on talking. So that's it. I'm sorry.
All right. We passed the soapbox around tonight. That's
yeah.
okay. All right. Any items from board members? Well, I'll have to throw something in because I went to the Capitol Conference as well as Dr. Knight Abowitz, and a while back I demanded that when board members went to something that they give a report. And so here I am. And like her, I think I went to mostly sessions on case law, legal updates, policy issues to try to keep us out of trouble. I went to one workshop on navigating tense times in school board meetings and discovered it would be very easy for Mr. Mead to cause us to get sued, and learned a lot about ways to avoid that. And watched a video of two women speaking at public session just lambasting a board, and then another video from a different news station of the same two women lambasting a board, and then the same two women in another state on the news at a board meeting just going after the board. And it turned out apparently that was their full-time job, to drive around and just yell at board members. Luckily, we have a policy about living in the district before you speak, and the 3-minute limit that you'll notice Mr. Mead sets a timer so that even if I love what you're saying, Mr. Likens, you hit 3 minutes, you're off. Or if I hate what you're saying, you hit 3 minutes, you're off. It'll keep us out of trouble. It seems obnoxious, but there was a lot of information there about sort of managing things. So I learned a lot. I also talked to a couple vendors about solar panels, and in the Inflation Reduction Act, institutions like ours can have solar panels put on their buildings and or in their fields, and we have lots of fields at Talawanda, and they would come free, and then we would get a reduced electricity rate, so it would save money. Now, I know there's probably, as with anything that sounds simple, it's not simple, and there's all sorts of downfalls. But I got the information. I'll give it to you, Dr. Thoreau, and you can pass it on. And hopefully someone on on the staff in their spare time can do some research and see if maybe that's a way that the district can save money in the long term in electricity savings, because that's a simple way to do that. And I have solar panels on my house and have had them there for 15 years, and I've saved $20,000, and they've paid for themselves. And if the school can do that and we can save some money, why not? So that's my report on the sessions. I also went to one on gender issues and legality, and there's a lot of case law that has already been settled about those things. And I realized listening to that session that, and talking to you about some of these things, Dr. Thoreau, that you know a lot, and our lawyers know a lot. So I feel pretty secure that we can keep ourselves out of trouble as we face issues. And I felt that way at all the legal and policy things I went to, that our administrative staff is on the ball, and a lot of things people were saying happened at their school. I'm thinking, I couldn't imagine that happening here, because we know better. So I appreciate that. Okay, if no one else has anything else, our next board meeting is January 12th, and that's our organizational meeting, which will be followed by a regular board meeting. And can
So
I
we
have
will
a-
start the organizational meeting earlier. I'm not sure if it'll start at 6:30 or 6:45. I don't know if we listed
Okay.
it yet, just for your information. And then 7 p.m. is our normal regular meeting. Last time we did it, it only took us 15 minutes. So I'm
Right.
thinking 6:45
Right,
is
and
ample time.
we have no new members to swear in. Basically, the organizational meeting is electing a board president and sort of assigning our roles. It should take no time.
So we will send out that agenda, just so that you know. Check that time.
All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Ablitz. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bothus. Please call the roll. Mr. Fauski?
Dr. Knight Abowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Bothus,
Yes.
Dr. Howard,
Yes?
Mr. Otto,
Yes.
Mr. Mead.
Yes. Thank you very much.